From the KELOLAND Digital Desk, meteorologist Scott Mundt. This is Weather or Not. It's Thursday, February 12th. We started some cloud cover in eastern, southeastern KELOLAND, but very, very dry atmosphere. Hard to get anything to fall and actually hit the ground. If we did, it was a scattered sprinkle, enough maybe to dot the landscape, and that's about it. So now we are looking at sunshine for today. You see that here on Futurecast. And very warm, temperatures well above average, low to middle 50s. That will show up in many locations today. If we are cooler than that, they'll probably happen in northeastern South Dakota. I'll point out Watertown. Watertown may be stuck in the upper 40s, but those numbers are still well above average. Not as warm tonight, but still above average. Temperatures only falling to the 20s. Another mild day for tomorrow. And this is Futurecast already jumping into Saturday. Clouds trying to thicken a little. Looks like there is a boundary in southeastern South Dakota that can lead to those thicker clouds. You can see all of those winds are coming in from different directions, right where we do have that cloud line. So we'll see if we do get thicker clouds in southeastern South Dakota. That, of course, will play a role in how warm we get. But we are still looking at temperatures to be well above average. And winds will be light for today. And I think this will bring up an interesting thing, too, with our light winds not able to mix up the atmosphere as much. So we'll see how warm we get. We have very dry ground. We know we have dry ground. We should have a lot of sunshine this afternoon. Sun angle continues to get better, but you have to think, too, that the climate average high is around the 31 degrees in Sioux Falls. Now, that takes into account, being a climate average high, that we usually have at least some snow cover in more years as compared to other years, typically with some type of snow cover on the ground to keep those temperatures a little bit cooler. But it's not the case this year. So we do have the snow-free ground. We have very, very little moisture that's actually in the ground or in the soil. And that's the reason why these temperatures continue to warm as they are, with numbers in the 50s. I did some research on the actual sun angle and comparing that, what our sun angle is for this week, and comparing that to when it is close to that same sun angle. It takes us back to the end of October, and then we have to go backwards. So we start at the end of October and go into the middle of October. And then that sun angle kind of matches up what's going on for this week and going even a little into next week. And those average highs from that time in October are in the 50s. And that's what we have in our forecast. Temperatures in the 50s. So with dry ground, no snow on the ground, getting that same sun angle as what we do in October, we're real close to our average high temperatures in October. I think there's something to that. It's kind of muddy water thinking, but just looking at that sun angle, and I know we're changing season. A lot of things go into it. Changing of the seasons, going from the warm to the cold. Now we're going from the cold to the warm with a better sun angle too. And what's going on with the cloud cover, what's going on with our wind, a whole bunch of stuff can go into it. But when you look at some of those numbers, I find it interesting anyway to have those temperatures real close to our average highs when you're looking at more or less the same sun angle. So we'll have these numbers in the 50s, near 60 degrees on occasion. This happens with light winds as we go through the day and into this evening. We'll continue with light wind speeds. Temperatures, high of 55. Sioux Falls hit 54 yesterday, so about the same. 49 Watertown, Sisseton, 50 in Aberdeen, 53 in Pierre, and 54 in Rapid City. Tonight, temperatures will be cooler in southeastern KELOLAND. We'll go mostly clear to partly cloudy. Expect numbers in the middle 20s in many locations. And for tomorrow, temperatures will once again reach the 50s, maybe showing some low 60s there, south central to southeastern South Dakota. Light winds again for tomorrow. And coming up in today's show, we'll talk about that weekend forecast, probably do some grilling. I would not be surprised for that. It's Valentine's weekend after all. The moisture, new drought monitor came out today. We'll take a look at that. And also our weather pattern. What's going on for the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Stay with us. You're watching Weather. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Let's go ahead and take a look at our weekend forecast. And I mentioned right before the break that I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people maybe fire up that grill for this coming weekend. Look at these temperatures. Numbers in the 50s and 60s, kind of reflecting numbers that we see maybe late March into April. We'll go with mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies. You see that Sunday will be a little bit warmer as compared to Saturday. That covers many locations across KELOLAND, anywhere from 3, maybe as much as 5, 7 degrees warmer when you look at that temperature Saturday into Sunday. Our forecast high in Sioux Falls on Saturday is 57. We'll try to hit 60 on Sunday, and if we don't hit 60, I think we'll be really close to it. And you can see these numbers near 60 in Pierre, 58. 60 is our forecast high on Sunday in Rapid City. Yankton will probably hit the low to middle 60s this weekend. As we do bring in other locations in KELOLAND, you see these temperatures, again, well above average, middle 50s to near 60 degrees for both Saturday and Sunday. And this all happens with that mostly sunny to partly cloudy sky. As we take a look at the surface features, there's not much really to speak of. We are looking at temperatures that will warm by midday. Many of us already in the 40s, 50s. We'll see how many of us actually touch 60 degrees. And then for Sunday, I think will be a little more interesting. We will have an increasing southerly wind. So as I mentioned, those temperatures will be just a couple of degrees warmer on Sunday compared to what's expected for the first half of the weekend. And I think that is a trend that may actually continue as we get into early next week, trying to keep these temperatures well above average in the 50s to near 60 degrees on occasion. But you notice that front's trying to move through. We'll see what actually happens with that front. It's probably more of a wind shift line than anything else, as we'll see our winds change direction, maybe to the west, to the northwest. I'm not really counting on much cooler air arriving with that front. We'll take another look at our moisture coming up here after the break, but also bring in that new drought monitor, because I think this is something that we need to really start paying attention to. Talked about this yesterday. As we do get into these warmer months ahead, getting into spring, thinking about planting, things like that, we'll have to pay close attention to this moisture. And we'll bring up that drought monitor, and we'll continue to do that throughout the program of whether or not as we go over the next several weeks. So stay with us. We have plenty more to talk about. Thank you for joining us here on Weather or Not. I'm now joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. And Brian, something we talked about this morning, lack of moisture and drought. That will be a topic of conversation, I think, as we do go forward, if we continue to miss out on our precipitation chances.
Well, and, this is kind of carryover from the fall.
And this is new, by the way. This is the new drought monitor. It comes out every Thursday.
And the biggest change is western Nebraska, where we haven't been getting precipitation, even from the very beginning when we had some snow and some other things going on up in our area. Western Nebraska has really missed out a lot. So keep an eye on that, because that is a source that, for one thing, that's going to feed the warmth. I think the dry soil conditions in Nebraska will aid some of the warming we see this weekend. But it's also something to acknowledge as you get into late winter, early spring, and see if this grows or if it begins to shrink. I'll be interested in Colorado and New Mexico. There's some promising signs that drought might get some improvement with this southwest trough. We also feature some systems going through Oklahoma and Arkansas. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, but, there's some pretty big deficits there south of St. Louis. In fact, even into Illinois, they're needing some rain, but they can fix that problem pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're trying to shake things up. And in fact, in the next segment, Brian, I want you to show your graphic you had on KELOLAND this morning about the number of systems that are expected to move through. So I'll give you some time there to find that graphic, put that together. Otherwise, here's a look at the big picture here. We talked about those dry conditions that we have extending all the way to the south and also to the east. And, I brought this up to Brian earlier, telling him, didn't they just have a storm system move through with a bunch of rain and snow and ice? And, well, it was only the one that they've had move through. so they can use some more, and we can use some more as well. And we'll talk about that with our weather pattern coming up in the next segment. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Last segment, of course, the pattern ahead. And Brian, it's looking more and more interesting. We kind of had the same idea. I was going through graphics this morning. You had already been in earlier and looking at things. As I was going through, I'm like, here's one system. Here's another system. Should I say something to Brian? I didn't. And then about, half hour, 45 minutes later, you go, hey, this reminds me of a graphic I put together in November. What was that graphic?
Yeah, this one that when I brought it up out of my library, so I have things in my stash that
it's good to keep those things too, to always have a reference point to go back to.
Right, and so when I first brought it up, I'm like, oh yeah, last time I touched this was about 90 days ago.
Interesting.
Then I'm looking at the numbers because I plotted all these disturbances and I had 5 in there. Well, turns out that's the exact number I landed on in this forecast.
Should we show that? Go ahead and
let's bring it up.
Here we go. So take it away.
This is what we've got. So what we're doing here, all we're doing is we're identifying disturbances in this is looking at the 500 millibar levels. So we're looking, midway through the atmosphere, the troposphere. We're finding these troughs and ridges. So we've identified one disturbance to our south this weekend. We've talked about that. That's going to be a rainmaker for Texas and Oklahoma. And so that's going to bypass us to the south. But it's in the series. I'll give it that because it also connects very well with the drought. And, can we wake up the Gulf moisture, to come up? And that's
good.
That's, something that is important in the broader perspective. So that's what that represents. So there it goes. Number 2. So now we're going to look over to California. We're going to see a disturbance, a larger trough. Now, how does the modeling handle that? Okay, so we've got a basic configuration of a trough. So that's pretty well established here. That's going into Monday. Our forecast is of course, we're on the eastern flank of that, and that's a classic setup to warm up. You see this all the time with weather patterns in the Midwest, but we haven't had a lot of forcing in the Southwest like this for a while. So this is, Scott, I'd say pretty significant to get a decent system there. Where does that system number 2 go? Well, maybe it heads into North Dakota by the middle of next week.
Okay.
Possibly.
So it could brush us.
Yes, and certainly if it takes a track like that, well, then your low, of course, your mid-level low is going to go to the north. The surface low would also correspond, and that would put us on the warmer flank of that. So can we get clouds and rain chances? That would be my first inclination, but I also think there's a snow component up here in North Dakota. Don't be surprised if that becomes a bigger deal. It could tip either way, but it is something to follow. If that doesn't really pan out to be a whole lot, well, guess what? There's another system digging on the backside of the trough. You've got the Pacific Northwest involved with some of that. That gets us out to, the 21st of February. And again, it's on face value. I will say one little observation about this pattern is if you look at the orientation, this is a little meteorology that some of you out there, you like to see. Yeah, you're doing the wave gesturing with your hand over there, Scott. But we call this more of a positively tilted feature because see this stuff going on up in Canada? Okay, it basically tilts like this. So your forward flank up here in Saskatchewan connects to the southwest. If I really got rambunctious and got into a bigger possibility of a deeper storm, typically you'd want to get this reversed and you'd have it go more like from Seattle, Vancouver, or anywhere in British Columbia and then connect it to the southeast.
And that would be negative.
Yeah, that'd be negatively tilted. And then what happens in a case like this is sometimes something over the top like that can shear this out. Okay, so you got to think of fluid dynamics a little bit, how that works. When you work with, we've worked together for a few years, so we've seen a few of these over time.
And they move a lot quicker than if it was negatively tilted.
Yep. And this is really a good point to bring up, that I think when you bring up your comments about the weather forecast and then kind of gelling with what I'm talking about too, it's always interesting to have these conversations because you will come at it at a little different perspective. And that's what's so nice about working with you in the morning, is that we can bounce those ideas back and forth and think, okay, well, if it does this, well, then maybe it does. It's not a shoo-in that this is going to be all major storm development. But what it does signal is that we've got some activity going on. We've got several systems. And then, we'll both come at that a little differently on what that outcome could look like. And that's always the art. There's always a
fine art behind the forecast.
Yeah, it's an interesting science because it's not all just strictly numbers. We use the numbers as guidance, and then we put our own perspective on that and how it kind of hits us. And that's kind of unique to our station because we looking at our afternoon folks too, when we bring in the rest of our team of meteorologists, we all have our different little ways of interpreting things, and then we gel the forecast, and I think that's a great approach.
I talked earlier about, and I talked to you about this before too, but I talked earlier in this show about that sun angle theory that just popped in my head, saying, how uncommon are these temperatures? When you look at the sun angle, and that's something that I'm comparing this weekend to how warm we get, just because it's been so dry. We don't have any snow on the ground. It's almost like what happens in the fall, or what happened in the fall. We don't have any snow on the ground. The only difference is that we're going from a warm season to a cool season in the fall, as we're trying to get out of this cold season, winter, going into a warm season of spring. That's the difference here. When you look at the climate averages, of course, it's much cooler now as compared to when the sun angle is close to the same at the end of October.
Yeah, but
the average high then is 55 or close to 55, so it's still warm.
And the climate average is always weighted toward the assumption that there's some snow on the ground too.
Exactly.
And once you get rid of that, it's amazing how even for Sioux Falls, the climate statistics just shoot up as you would expect. But it's a pretty amazing difference. Even the numbers, if we had an inch or two of snow on the ground versus
big
nothing.
Difference. Yep.
So. But we're definitely seeing all of that feeding into the forecast. And as we said before, all these systems, they kind of go through. I'll finish up this graphic quickly. There is a system 4 and a 5, if you're curious about that. The alignment of that, though, that's a long ways down the road. But if we continue some troughing up here, that's kind of the takeaway. That gets me thinking about what that can bring us. And it's more active. It definitely is that. And, of course, temperature trends, you're going to see a lot of this. The significantly above normal, record-breaking perhaps for some locations. The amplification of this pattern, probably Tuesday, is where this thing maxes out from here south. And then after that, the change, the colors on the map. And this guy, he gets a little bit of a...
He's like, hey, I'm not done.
No, he is not done. There's some pretty decent departures from average. How many days in a row have we shown this, too, up here?
Yeah, and the thing about it, too, is, it's been delayed, but it's still showing it's, getting a little bit deeper with that cold air as well.
It is, yeah. There's a reach to that all the way to Arizona, departures from normal. I picked a good time to go to Arizona. It was kind of nice when I was there.
Yeah, well.
I think it's going to be a little colder in Phoenix,
Okay, so what would that put the temperature at, 50-something?
Probably.
Well, that's what it is here.
In the 50s, it would be, colder normal. But see, now this time around, you could go Texas, Gulf Coast, Florida, see all that warmth down there. But even that,
it's getting squeezed.
If you get a cold front that goes into the Gulf, that's, those are pretty strong features. And so, yeah. Does this kind of wash out? Maybe, And by the way, this is not advertising extreme cold. What it tells me is that it can get colder. It could go below normal. And then the shakeup really is going to depend on any storm tracks and how those evolve. So we're not there yet, but we always like to bring these things up because it is worth, we can be a source of like, oh, yeah, I heard about that a week ago that things were going to start to change. And this program is a good opportunity to do that.
And I like how you said, was it 90 days ago? Okay, so we kind of look for a pattern recognition. 90 days, we always think of this fog theory, too. We kind of looked back at some of those stats, and we really didn't have thick fog in Sioux Falls during that time, but we did in Aberdeen. 3 dates that stand out. I had to write them down, too. November 25th and 27th. That's when the thick fog visibility down to quarter mile less. And then December 9th. Now, those dates, 90 days from them, line up to the 23rd and 25th of February. Okay, that's in the middle of that active pattern that you just showed.
Yep.
And the 3rd of March.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the 9th of March. The 9th of March.
Oh, okay. Well,
so then what happens? Then we'll be in the middle of March. And if the pattern repeats itself, do we return to well above average temperatures and say winter's done?
Boy,
I'm really throwing the line out now.
Yeah. But let's think about, too, that the pattern we recognized, and I liked how when we were doing this show a few weeks ago, we were talking about, remember the cyclical patterns you identified with the wind and the cold back in September, October?
And then we hit the solstice, and to me, I didn't recognize anything, and they got erased.
Right, and it all changes. Yep. It does, and I think that's something you brought up over the years. So now we'll just see if this aligns more with that pattern of time. Remember when we all thought we were a shoo-in for a white Christmas? And then
we talked about that this morning, too.
It all disappeared?
Behind the scenes.
So we've been there. We've had winter. We've had a big break, long extended break in terms of heavy snow. Mm-hmm. We'll see. It can certainly wake up again. So we've got a few things to watch, Scott.
I just want to probably end with this, too. Here's a look at the climate stats for Sioux Falls. Now, this takes us back to November, and I got a minute worth of time here. We had that one snow move through, a little bit more than 3 inches. That was on the 8th. You talked about this yesterday. You had a group of kids in at the station, and then nothing really happened until the end of the month, right around Thanksgiving time.
Yes.
So we had that snow move through. So, aside from the 3.2 inches, the total for the month was 8.3. So we had about 5 inches of snow there toward the end of the month. So let's go ahead and jump right into December. And I'm only showing this just in case things do repeat. We'll get our hits of these, troughs and storms trying to move through, maybe give us some precipitation, much needed precipitation, and then we'll see what happens after that. But again, a lot of the snow's in December. Here's the 15th. We go all the way across. A lot of the snow fell in the first half of the month.
It was all early. Yep.
And then after that, maybe added up to 2 inches.
Yeah.
So can we have like a 3.5 week period again of seeing some snow or rain?
Yep.
Any type of precipitation will do.
That will be an interesting subject to follow.
And we'll continue to follow it here on Whether or Not. Thank you for joining us.